I stared at the termination letter in Marcus Henderson's office, the words blurring as I processed what was happening. Effective immediately, your position as senior research engineer has been eliminated due to restructuring. The irony wasn't lost on me. 3 weeks after Dr. Patricia Coleman's sudden death from a stroke, and here I was being fired. The timing was no coincidence. I understand, I said, keeping my voice steady despite the rage building inside me. I'll need to transfer all my current projects immediately. Marcus leaned forward, barely containing his eagerness, especially the advanced materials research. Dr. Coleman mentioned some promising developments before her. Unfortunate passing. That's when I knew they had no idea what Patricia had actually accomplished in her final months. No idea she had quietly transferred 15 critical patent applications to my name 2 weeks before her death. No idea I had already submitted my resignation to the patent office that morning, along with applications to establish my own research laboratory. Of course, I replied with a calm smile. I'll gather everything. Marcus seemed disappointed by my composed reaction. He'd expected tears, perhaps pleading. Instead, he got the professionalism that had clearly unnerved him throughout our brief working relationship. You have until 5 p.m. today, he said dismissively. I walked past the curious stares of colleagues who had obviously been expecting this meeting's outcome. Some looked away guiltily, already knowing my fate. Others watched with poorly concealed satisfaction, one less competitor for the upcoming promotions. At my lab bench, I began methodically packing my personal items into a box HR had thoughtfully provided. How considerate. Sarah from the materials lab approached, lowering her voice conspiratorially. Is it true they're letting you go? Apparently, budget constraints, I replied, carefully wrapping the molecular model Patricia had given me for my 5th anniversary with Technova Industries. That's insane. You just published that breakthrough paper on carbon nanotube applications last month. I shrugged. Corporate decisions rarely make sense from our perspective. What I didn't say, this was exactly what Patricia had predicted, exactly what we had prepared for. 8 months earlier, Patricia had asked me to stay late in her private lab. The building was nearly empty except for security and the overnight cleaning crew. Emily, she said as I entered, close the door and sit down. Dr. Patricia Coleman was Technova's chief technology officer and the most brilliant materials scientist I'd ever known. At 58, she commanded respect from everyone, though acceptance was another matter entirely. I've been watching you excel for 5 years, she began, her intense gaze focused on me. Your innovations have generated 12 patents and 3 major product lines, yet they keep passing you over for leadership positions. I remained silent, though we both knew the truth. Despite my MIT PhD and proven track record, I remained stuck in a senior engineer role while less qualified male colleagues advanced to management positions. The executive team has a particular vision for leadership, she continued carefully, and apparently we don't fit their profile. What she didn't say, but we both understood, the all-male C-suite maintained their positions through a network of favoritism and mutual protection. Patricia had shattered their glass ceiling through sheer brilliance, but remained isolated at the top. I'm dying, she stated matter-of-factly. Aggressive brain tumor, maybe 4 months. I nearly dropped my coffee, my hands trembling. Patricia, when I'm gone, they'll divide my research portfolio among the department heads who have no understanding of the work's true value. Unless, she paused, studying my reaction, we ensure the most critical projects remain in capable hands. She outlined her plan. Over the following months, she would gradually introduce me to her most sensitive research, advanced materials with potential military and aerospace applications. These weren't the flashy consumer projects that garnered attention, but foundational technologies worth hundreds of millions. They're watching the high-profile developments, she explained, not the fundamental research that actually drives innovation. For months, we worked together in carefully orchestrated secrecy. Patricia taught me the intricacies of patent law, the strategic timing of applications, and the art of protecting intellectual property. To outside observers, it appeared she was finally delegating due to health concerns she'd vaguely mentioned. In reality, she was transferring her life's work to me. Dr. Coleman never brings anyone to these late sessions, remarked Jake from the semiconductor division when he found us working at 9 p.m. You must be her chosen successor. Emily sees patterns others miss, Patricia replied simply. She understands the bigger picture. By the 6th month, I knew every detail of her research better than some of the projects I'd originated myself. By the 7th month, she was consulting me before making major decisions. By the 8th month, we were ready for the legal transfer. Everything must be documented perfectly, Patricia insisted. They'll challenge every filing if they suspect what's happening. We met with her personal patent attorney, not Technova's legal team. Papers were drawn, applications prepared, ownership structures established. One by one, 15 critical patents were legally transferred to me as the primary inventor, a designation she justified through my substantial contributions to each project. The company remained oblivious, focused on quarterly earnings and product announcements. When Patricia began working from home more frequently, citing medical treatments, no one questioned my increased presence in her lab. They assumed I was covering her routine responsibilities. Only Marcus seemed suspicious, demanding increasingly detailed reports about ongoing research. The board needs visibility into all CTO-level projects, he insisted. I provided sanitized summaries that revealed nothing about the true scope or value of our work. Patricia had warned me about Marcus specifically. He's been angling for a CTO promotion for years. He knows my portfolio represents job security and substantial bonuses. 2 weeks before her death, Patricia invited me to her home in the Berkeley Hills. I'd never been there before and was surprised by its modest interior despite her executive salary. I live below my means, she explained, noticing my expression. Financial independence provides options. Remember that. On her dining table lay the final documentation, complete transfer of patent ownership, all properly executed and filed with the USPTO. Is this legal? I asked, stunned by the comprehensiveness of the paperwork. Completely. I'm transferring rights to innovations we developed together, not company property. The distinction is crucial. She slid the papers toward me. Keep these somewhere secure, away from your apartment and office. I arranged for a safety deposit box that afternoon. They'll come for you after I'm gone, she warned, her voice weaker than I'd ever heard it. Be ready. 4 days later, her assistant called in tears. Patricia had suffered a massive stroke during the night. She was gone. Technova's response was swift and predictable. A respectful email announcement, a memorial fund in her name, a team meeting where the CEO spoke about her contributions before quickly pivoting to maintaining research momentum during this transition. At her funeral, I stood apart from my colleagues, observing their performance of grief. The CEO gave a polished eulogy that somehow managed to make Patricia's achievements sound like corporate victories. Marcus approached me afterward, his expression sympathetic while his eyes remained calculating. Such a loss, he said. We'll need to discuss transitioning her research portfolio soon. I nodded solemnly, whatever the company needs. That evening came the CEO's email demanding a complete inventory of all research projects. The next morning, I provided a thorough list that omitted the 15 transferred patents. Where are the advanced materials applications? Marcus demanded, frowning at my report. I'm not familiar with those specifics, I lied smoothly. Dr. Coleman handled them personally. His expression tightened. Search her files, we need those projects. For the next week, I performed an exhaustive search of Patricia's office, finding nothing because there was nothing to find. She'd been methodical in removing any trace of the transferred research. Meanwhile, I used my evenings to meet with patent attorneys, setting up the infrastructure for my new laboratory. Each day, Marcus grew more agitated. The quarterly research review was approaching, and the missing projects represented millions in potential revenue. The executive team held closed-door meetings that ended with grim expressions and hushed conversations that stopped when I appeared. Then came my termination meeting, the culmination of their frustration and my preparation. As I carried my box toward the elevator, Marcus approached one final time. Before you leave, he said, voice low and urgent, where are Dr. Coleman's advanced materials files? This isn't personal. The company needs those innovations. I set down my box and looked him directly in the eyes. I have no idea what you're talking about. Don't play games, Emily. Those patents could be worth hundreds of millions. They belong to Technova. I picked up my box again. Actually, they belong to whoever filed them first. His face reddened. Is that a threat? Just a fact, I replied, stepping into the elevator. As the doors closed on his angry expression, I allowed myself a small smile. The termination I'd been expecting had finally arrived. But unlike what Marcus and the executive team believed, this wasn't the end of my story. It was only the beginning. The morning after my termination, I woke before dawn. For the first time in 5 years, I didn't have to rush to Technova's sterile laboratories. Technically, I was unemployed. In reality, I was freer than I'd been since graduate school. I made coffee and sat on my apartment's small balcony, watching San Francisco wake up below. My phone buzzed with concerned messages from former colleagues. Sarah had sent multiple texts, each more worried than the last. I answered briefly, I'm fine, better than fine. The truth was, I'd been preparing for this day for months. The night before Patricia's funeral, I'd opened a business account for Coleman Chen Research LLC. 2 days later, I'd filed incorporation papers. 3 weeks after that, I'd signed a lease for laboratory space in a converted warehouse in the Mission District, within walking distance of 5 major tech companies. All of this had been done quietly, methodically, following Patricia's detailed roadmap. Don't rush, she'd advised. Let them reveal their true nature first. And they had, spectacularly. My phone rang, an unknown number. I hesitated before answering. Emily Chen speaking. Miss Chen, this is David Morrison, General Counsel for Technova Industries. We need to discuss certain intellectual property matters that have come to our attention. I knew David from company meetings, though he'd never bothered to learn my name despite my 5 years of service. There seems to be some confusion regarding patent applications formerly associated with Dr. Coleman's research. The company would like to schedule a meeting to clarify ownership. There's no confusion on my part, I replied, sipping my coffee. Perhaps I'm not being clear. These patents represent Technova's intellectual property. Any attempt to claim ownership would constitute theft of trade secrets. I'd been expecting this. Patricia had prepared me for it. I have no intention of discussing this without my attorney present. Any further communication should be directed to her office. I provided contact information for Jessica Liu, the patent attorney Patricia had introduced me to. This could be resolved amicably, David said, his tone shifting to false friendliness. The company is prepared to offer you a consulting position to facilitate proper transfer of these innovations. Goodbye, David. I ended the call and blocked the number. 20 minutes later, my phone rang again, the CEO himself. I let it go to voicemail. His message was terse. Emily, this is serious. Call me immediately. Instead, I sent a text to Dr. James Mitchell, the materials science professor who'd agreed to serve on my new company's advisory board. Still on for our 10 a.m. meeting? His reply came immediately. Absolutely. Excited to see the lab space. I showered and dressed carefully, choosing a navy blazer Patricia had once complimented. Authority isn't about blending in, she told me. It's about commanding respect. The laboratory space I'd leased wasn't fully equipped yet, just basic benches and a few essential instruments, but the exposed brick walls and high ceilings gave it an inspiring atmosphere. Dr. Mitchell arrived precisely at 10, carrying a briefcase full of academic contacts. Impressive space, he said, examining the layout. Bit sparse, though. Starting lean, I replied, building deliberately. Dr. Mitchell set his briefcase on the main bench. I got a call from Technova this morning, some executive named Henderson. My pulse quickened. What did he want? To schedule a meeting about your alleged patent theft. Said there'd been a misunderstanding about intellectual property ownership. Dr. Mitchell smiled. I told him to check his facts. Patents belong to their inventors, not their employers, unless specifically assigned. And what did he say to that? He got very quiet, then hung up rather abruptly. I grinned, feeling a wave of vindication. Enough about corporate politics, Dr. Mitchell continued, opening his briefcase. Let me show you the research proposals I've been reviewing. By noon, I'd confirmed meetings with 3 potential clients for the following week. By 3 p.m., I'd received emails from 2 former Technova colleagues reporting similar calls from various executives. At 4 p.m., Jessica called. They're threatening legal action, she said without preamble, claiming patent theft, breach of contract, and misappropriation of trade secrets. Exactly as Patricia predicted, I replied. Yes, and exactly as we prepared for. I've reviewed all documentation again. The patent transfers were executed properly with full disclosure. You never signed a non-compete clause, and there are no legitimate trade secrets involved since all innovations were based on your original research contributions. So we're on solid ground? Absolutely. But they don't know that yet. They're bluffing, hoping you'll panic. What's our next move? Let them posture. I've requested copies of all relevant employment agreements and patent assignments. That should keep them busy while they realize their paperwork doesn't support their claims. After hanging up, I walked to the lab's large windows, watching traffic navigate the busy street below. Patricia had loved this view when we toured this space together just weeks before her death. Remember, Emily, she'd said, standing in this exact spot. When they realize what's happened, they'll try intimidation first. When that fails, they'll try money. She'd turned to me, her face gaunt, but her eyes still fierce. And when that fails, they'll show you exactly who they really are. My phone buzzed with a text from an unfamiliar number. Emily, it's Ryan. Can we talk? Not company business. Personal. Ryan Park, one of the few colleagues I'd considered a friend. He'd joined Technova the same year as me, though his mechanical engineering background had led to faster advancement in the product development division. I replied, when and where? His response came quickly. Tonight? That coffee shop near campus? I frowned. How did he know I still frequented places near Berkeley? I'd moved apartments 6 months ago and had never mentioned my new neighborhood at work. Pete's on Shattuck at 7, I replied, naming a busy cafe instead. I arrived early, choosing a table with clear views of both entrances. Ryan walked in exactly at 7, scanning the room until he spotted me. He looked exhausted, his usual confident demeanor missing. Thanks for meeting me, he said, settling into the chair across from mine. What's this about, Ryan? He ordered espresso before speaking again. Things are insane at the office. The executives are in complete meltdown mode over these missing patents. How so? They're claiming you and Dr. Coleman conspired to steal proprietary research. They're building a case against you. There is no case, I said calmly. They've pulled 5 years of your emails looking for evidence. They're interviewing everyone who worked with you, asking if you ever discussed taking research outside the company. He leaned forward. Emily, they're trying to destroy your professional reputation. Why are you telling me this? He stared into his espresso for a long moment. because Dr. Coleman once warned me when they were setting me up to fail on the turbine project. I owe her, and by extension you. This was unexpected. Ryan had always seemed politically savvy, willing to play corporate games. What exactly are they planning? They're contacting patent examiners claiming you misrepresented your authority to file applications. They're threatening to contest every filing. And they're preparing to freeze Dr. Coleman's final compensation package, claiming evidence of misconduct. This sent anger surging through me. Patricia's nephew was starting medical school in the fall. That money was meant for his tuition. Thank you for telling me, I said finally. Ryan hesitated. There's one more thing. They've offered me a promotion to lead the Advanced Materials Division. Part of my job would be testifying about your work practices. And will you? There's nothing negative to testify about. You were the most ethical researcher in that building. After he left, I sat alone processing this information. They were more desperate than I'd anticipated. Targeting Patricia's family crossed a line I hadn't expected even them to cross. I called Jessica again. They're freezing Patricia's final compensation. I just heard from her nephew's attorney. Jessica confirmed. They're claiming evidence of breach of fiduciary duty. Can they do that? They can try. It won't hold up, but it could delay payment for months. That's exactly what they want. Leverage. Her nephew needs that money now. I know. I'm working on it. I ended the call and headed home, my mind racing. This wasn't just about me anymore. They were punishing Patricia's family to get to me. The next morning, I received an email from the CEO himself, requesting a private meeting to resolve our misunderstanding amicably. I forwarded it to Jessica without responding. Her reply was swift. They're getting desperate. The legal threats aren't working, so now they're trying diplomacy. Stick to the plan. The plan. Patricia's plan, now mine. A careful sequence designed to give me maximum leverage when the time came. By the end of the week, I'd filed 3 additional patent applications based on research I'd completed independently. My laboratory was taking shape with equipment purchases funded by a small business loan. The initial panic had faded, replaced by steady determination. Then came the first real complication. Dr. Mitchell called on Friday afternoon, his voice tight with concern. Emily, we have a situation. Technova is telling my university colleagues that your patent applications are illegitimate. They're claiming it could jeopardize any research collaborations with Berkeley. My grip on the phone tightened. That's completely false. I know that, but my department head is nervous. They're talking about suspending our advisory agreement unless this gets resolved quickly. The university connection was crucial for credibility and access to advanced equipment. Losing that would be devastating. Give me your department head's contact information, I said. I'll have Jessica reach out directly. There's more, Dr. Mitchell continued. They've offered to fund a new materials research chair at Berkeley if the university distances itself from your company. This was the first crack in my foundation. If the university pulled out, other partnerships might follow. We don't want to abandon you, he added quickly. You were Patricia's chosen successor. We trust her judgment. Let me see what I can do, I promised. After hanging up, I paced my small apartment. This was an escalation I hadn't fully prepared for. They were targeting my support network, trying to isolate me professionally. I called Jessica again, explaining the situation. They're playing hardball, she agreed. But so can we. How? I can't match a university research chair endowment. No, but you have something they don't. I could hear the smile in her voice. You have Patricia's contingency plan. The next morning, I invited Dr. Mitchell to my laboratory. When he arrived, Jessica was already there, along with a woman I'd never met. Tall, silver-haired, with the confident bearing of someone used to commanding rooms. Dr. Mitchell, this is Dr. Angela Reeves, I said. Former director of Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory and Patricia's doctoral advisor. Dr. Mitchell's eyes widened. Dr. Reeves was legendary in materials science, an early pioneer in nanotechnology research. Dr. Mitchell, she said, extending her hand, Patricia spoke highly of your work on semiconductor applications. Dr. Reeves, I had no idea you were involved with Emily's company. I wasn't until yesterday, she replied, glancing at me. But Patricia asked me to monitor certain situations that might arise after her passing. Your current predicament qualifies. For the next hour, Dr. Reeves outlined a potential collaboration that would not only resolve the university pressure, but potentially accelerate my company's research timeline. She had connections throughout the national laboratory system and could provide access to equipment that made Technova's resources look modest. By the time Dr. Mitchell left, the crisis had transformed into an opportunity. Thank you, I said to Dr. Reeves after he'd gone. Patricia never mentioned she'd spoken to you about this. Patricia kept many cards close to her chest, she replied. She contacted me shortly before her death, explained what she was planning for you, and asked if I'd be willing to intervene if certain situations arose. And you agreed just like that? Dr. Reeves' expression softened. Patricia was my most brilliant student. When she told me about the systematic barriers you both faced at Technova, it reminded me of my own early career struggles. Sometimes we have to create our own opportunities. Over the next 2 weeks, similar scenarios played out with other vulnerable relationships. When Technova targeted them with aggressive tactics, I found ways to strengthen those connections rather than simply trying to maintain them. When they tried to discredit me with potential investors, Dr. Reeves introduced me to venture capital firms specializing in deep tech. When they approached potential clients with warnings about my company's legitimacy, I provided detailed technical presentations that demonstrated our capabilities. Each response was calculated, professional, and devastating to their credibility. The executive team's tactics grew increasingly desperate. They attempted to contact my patent attorney's other clients. They spread rumors about my company's financial stability. They even sent a junior lawyer to stake out my laboratory, documenting everyone who entered and left. Through it all, I maintained the composed demeanor Patricia had modeled. Never let them see you sweat, she'd advised. The moment you react emotionally, they think they've won. 3 weeks after my termination, I received another email from the CEO marked urgent and confidential. This has gone far enough. We're prepared to offer you a Chief Technology Officer position with full executive privileges if you assign your patent applications to Technova. This offer expires in 48 hours. I forwarded it to Jessica with a single question. Time? Her response was equally brief. Almost. That evening, I spread all my documentation across my apartment's dining table. Patent applications, transfer agreements, email correspondences, research notes, everything meticulously organized and preserved. 8 months of careful preparation leading to this moment. My phone rang, Marcus's number. I answered out of curiosity. The CEO's offer is genuine, he said without preamble. Full CTO position, corner office, equity package. Sounds generous, I replied. It's more than generous. It's unprecedented for someone at your level. And what would my responsibilities be in this position? He hesitated. Strategic research oversight. Meaning I'd assign my patents to Technova, but wouldn't actually control the research direction. Details would be negotiated. Of course they would, I echoed. And you, what's your role in this arrangement? Another hesitation. I've been asked to facilitate the transition. Meaning you've been told to get me to agree at any cost because the quarterly patents report is due next week and the board is asking uncomfortable questions. The silence confirmed my assessment. The offer expires tomorrow, he finally said. I suggest you consider it carefully. I always do, I replied, ending the call. I sent a message to Jessica. They've offered CTO position. Getting desperate. Her reply came immediately. Perfect, exactly on schedule. Meet tomorrow, 9 a.m. Bring everything. The next morning, I arrived at Jessica's office carrying a briefcase full of documents. She was waiting with a colleague I hadn't met. A serious-looking man introduced simply as Agent Torres from the FBI's white-collar crime division. My heart raced as I realized what was happening. This was the moment Patricia had been building toward all along. Not just a plan for me to start my own company, but something much bigger. Miss Chen, Agent Torres said, I understand you have information regarding potential securities violations at your former company. I looked at Jessica, who nodded encouragingly. Yes, I replied, opening my briefcase. I believe I do. The documents I placed on the table represented only a fraction of what Patricia had compiled over 15 years. Evidence of systematic patent fraud that went far beyond simple research theft. False claims to investors about proprietary technology, hidden licensing agreements, artificially inflated patent portfolios, a pattern of deception designed to boost stock prices while misleading shareholders. Dr. Coleman discovered these irregularities 2 years ago, I explained. She began documenting everything, building a case methodically. Why didn't she report it immediately? Agent Torres asked. She tried internally first, following proper channels. When that failed, she approached a board member confidentially. 2 weeks later, her research budget was cut by 40%, and 3 of her team members were transferred to other divisions. Agent Torres examined the documents carefully. And she shared all this with you? Not until she knew she was dying. She needed someone to continue what she'd started. The patent transfers, Jessica added, they weren't just about helping Emily start her own company. They were about protecting legitimate innovations from being buried in fraudulent schemes. And what exactly is the scope of this fraud? Agent Torres asked. I pulled out the final document, a detailed analysis showing how Technova had been claiming ownership of university research, filing patents on publicly available information, and using shell companies to create the appearance of a larger intellectual property portfolio than actually existed. When this becomes public, I said quietly, their entire patent portfolio will be challenged. Hundreds of licensing agreements will be invalidated. Agent Torres gathered the documents carefully. This will take time to verify. Of course, I agreed. Patricia understood that. That's why she was so methodical in her documentation. As Agent Torres left with the evidence, Jessica turned to me with an approving nod. You've done exactly what Patricia hoped you would. Maintained your composure, followed the plan, and delivered the evidence exactly when needed. So what happens now? Now we wait. But not for long. I left Jessica's office feeling a weight been carrying finally lift. The last piece of Patricia's plan was in motion. All those months of careful preparation had led to this moment. My phone buzzed with a text from the CEO. Offer expires at 5 p.m. today. Final opportunity. I didn't bother responding. There was nothing left to say. Instead, I headed to my laboratory where 2 important meetings were scheduled for the afternoon. Life would continue. Innovation would proceed, regardless of what happened next. As I unlocked the lab door, my phone rang again. An unknown number. I almost didn't answer, assuming it was another desperate attempt from Technova. But something made me accept the call. Emily Chen speaking. Miss Chen, this is Agent Torres. We'd like to schedule a formal interview regarding the documentation you provided this morning. I closed my eyes, feeling a mix of emotions wash over me. Of course, whatever you need. And Miss Chen, his voice carried a note of satisfaction, you might want to check the financial news. I hung up, my fingers trembling slightly as I pulled up the financial news on my tablet. The headline made my breath catch. Federal investigation launched against Technova Industries amid patent fraud allegations. The accompanying article mentioned whistleblower documentation and systematic securities violations. Technova's stock had already dropped 15% in pre-market trading. My phone immediately began buzzing with notifications. Colleagues asking if I'd seen the news, reporters requesting comments, and one final message from the CEO. What have you done? I set the tablet down and took a deep breath. This was the culmination of Patricia's plan. Not just patent transfers in my new company, but justice. The kind that couldn't be negotiated away or buried under corporate lawyers. As the day progressed, the news grew more detailed. Trading of Technova stock was halted after it plunged 30%. Patent attorneys were analyzing the implications. Former employees were being interviewed about their experiences. By noon, the first executives were being photographed leaving the building with security escorts. By 2, the board had announced an emergency meeting. By 4, Marcus and 2 others had been placed on administrative leave pending investigation. Through it all, I conducted my planned meetings as scheduled. Though everyone wanted to discuss the breaking news, I remained focused on the future. Did you know this was coming? Dr. Mitchell asked during our afternoon conference call. Let's focus on our collaboration timeline, I replied, neither confirming nor denying. That evening, Jessica called. The SEC has requested formal interviews with 23 current and former employees. Your name is at the top of the list. I assumed it would be. They've also frozen all executive compensation packages from the past 3 years pending investigation. I thought of Patricia's nephew and his medical school dreams. What about posthumous benefits? Will Patricia's family still be affected? Actually, no. Her final compensation package is being processed separately. Apparently, no one wants to appear to be punishing a deceased whistleblower's family right now. I smiled, feeling vindicated. Good, that's what matters most. There's something else, Jessica added. They found Patricia's original compliance report from 2 years ago, the one that was supposedly lost when she first tried to report the irregularities internally. So they knew all along. Every single one of them, the entire executive team was complicit. I thanked Jessica and ended the call, walking to my apartment's window to watch the city lights come on as evening settled. Everything was unfolding exactly as Patricia had planned. The company that had systematically marginalized us both was now facing the consequences of its actions. My phone buzzed with another message from Ryan. They're looking for scapegoats. Marcus is claiming you and Dr. Coleman fabricated everything. I wasn't surprised. Let him. The documentation speaks for itself. I've been asked to provide a statement about your research practices. And will you? I'll tell the truth, that you were the most brilliant and ethical researcher I ever worked with. I set my phone down, touched by his loyalty. Perhaps not everyone from my old life was lost. The next morning, Agent Torres arrived at my laboratory for our formal interview. For 4 hours, I walked him through every document, every irregularity, every attempt Patricia had made to address the issues through proper channels. She kept meticulous records, Torres observed, studying a particularly detailed analysis comparing Technova's patent claims to prior art. Patricia believed in accountability, I replied. She used to say that integrity isn't what you do when everyone's watching. It's what you do when you think no one will ever know. After Torres left, I sat alone in my laboratory, feeling a mixture of vindication and sadness. Patricia should have been here to see this. She'd orchestrated everything so perfectly, yet wouldn't witness the results of her planning. My phone rang. An unfamiliar number with a 6117 area code. Boston, Emily, this is David Coleman, Patricia's nephew. My heart quickened. David, yes. How are you holding up? I just received notification that Aunt Patricia's benefits are being released. All of them. The company's legal team suddenly became very cooperative. I'm glad to hear that. There's something else. She left a letter for you with my attorney. He was instructed to deliver it 1 month after everything unfolded. Would you like me to mail it, or... I can come to you, I said quickly, if that's all right. 2 days later, I sat in David's modest Cambridge apartment, holding an envelope with my name written in Patricia's distinctive handwriting. David had given me privacy, stepping out to walk around the MIT campus where his aunt had earned a PhD. The letter was dated 1 week before Patricia died. Emily, if you're reading this, then everything has proceeded according to plan. Technova is facing investigation. The innovations are safe with you, and my family's financial security is preserved. What you don't yet know is why I chose you specifically. It wasn't just your technical brilliance or your integrity, though both are remarkable. It was because 2 years ago, when I first discovered the patent fraud, you were the only person who noticed something was wrong. Not just with the company, but with me. You asked if I was okay when no one else saw past my carefully maintained facade. You offered to help without knowing what you were offering to help with. In that moment, I knew you were different. The company will try to paint me as vindictive, a bitter executive orchestrating their downfall from beyond the grave. Perhaps there's some truth in that. But my real motivation was justice. For myself, for you, for every brilliant mind whose potential was wasted because they wouldn't conform to a broken system. The patents I transferred to you aren't just innovations, they're opportunities. Build something better than what we came from. Create the research environment we always deserve to work in. There's one final thing. In the safety deposit box where you kept our documentation, you'll find a key to a storage unit. Inside is everything you'll need to understand the full scope of what we've uncovered. Use it wisely. With respect and confidence in your future, Patricia folded the letter carefully, tears blurring my vision. Even now, months after her death, Patricia was still guiding me, still offering wisdom from beyond. The next morning, I visited the storage unit. Inside was a single filing cabinet containing detailed profiles of every major technology company's patent practices, their vulnerabilities, their executives' decision histories. Information gathered meticulously over 15 years of careful observation. Among these was a separate folder labeled Industry Connections. Documentation of how patent fraud was coordinated across multiple companies, not just Technova. Copies of communications, meeting recordings, evidence so comprehensive it took my breath away. I immediately called Jessica and Agent Taurus. This wasn't just about Technova anymore. This was an industry-wide conspiracy involving dozens of companies and hundreds of fraudulent patents. Within days, the investigation expanded dramatically. The FBI raided 3 additional technology companies. The Patent Office announced a comprehensive review of applications filed over the past 5 years. Technova's stock became worthless as trading was permanently suspended. Through it all, my business grew steadily. The chaos in the industry created opportunities for ethical companies like mine. Clients sought partners they could trust. Investors looked for legitimate innovations rather than inflated patent portfolios. 6 months after my termination, I moved Coleman Chen Research into a state-of-the-art facility in Berkeley, just blocks from the university. My team had grown to include 12 full-time researchers, including Sarah, who had resigned from Technova the day after the investigation became public. On the morning we opened the new laboratory, a package arrived. A framed photograph of Patricia standing in her original MIT lab, wearing safety goggles and holding a prototype she developed as a graduate student. A note from David accompanied it. She'd want this in your new lab. I hung it in the main research area where every team member would see it daily. Beneath it, I placed a small plaque with the words that had guided me through the past year. Innovation thrives on integrity. That afternoon, I received an unexpected visitor, Ryan, looking uncomfortable in the unfamiliar academic surroundings. Impressive facility, he said, glancing around. Very different from the corporate environment. That's the point, I replied. What brings you here? I've been offered a position running what's left of Technova's materials division. They're trying to rebuild after the investigation. Congratulations. He shook his head. I turned it down. It doesn't feel right, profiting from the cleanup when I was part of the system that enabled everything. I studied him, seeing genuine regret in his expression. So what will you do? I don't know. Start fresh somewhere. Try to do better. He paused. I heard you're hiring. His surprise was evident when I nodded. We have an opening, junior researcher position, less money than you're used to, but it's honest work. You'd hire me after everything? Patricia believed in second chances, and you warned me when you didn't have to. The following week, our team gathered for the official dedication of the expanded laboratory. Colleagues, clients, academic partners, even some former Technova employees who had reached out after the company's collapse. David came with several of Patricia's former students, visibly moved by seeing her photograph prominently displayed. As I looked around at what we had built, not just a business, but a community founded on the principles Patricia had valued, I felt her presence as strongly as if she was standing beside me. The investigation continued to unfold, revealing deeper layers of fraud than even Patricia had documented. Technova was eventually dissolved, its assets sold to pay legal settlements. The company that had once seemed invincible was now a cautionary tale taught in business ethics courses. But that wasn't my concern anymore. My focus was on building something new, something better, not revenge for its own sake, but justice that created opportunities for ethical innovation. 3 months later, I received a call from Agent Taurus. The investigation had led to 17 indictments across the technology industry. Patent law was being reformed. A new era of accountability was beginning. Your courage in coming forward changed everything, he told me. This investigation wouldn't have been possible without the evidence Dr. Coleman preserved and you delivered. After hanging up, I walked through my laboratory, watching brilliant minds work on projects that would genuinely advance human knowledge. No inflated claims, no fraudulent applications, no exploitation of others' work, just pure innovation guided by integrity. In the end, the most powerful response to systematic corruption wasn't destroying what had hurt us. It was creating something so much better that the comparison itself became a judgment. Patricia had known that all along, and now so did I. I pulled out my phone and composed a message to post on social media, something I rarely did, but felt compelled to share. 6 months ago, I was fired for budget constraints. Today, Coleman Chen Research announced our 5th major patent approval and 3rd industry partnership. Sometimes the best revenge is simply being too successful to ignore. TAC Innovation, Integrity, Patricia Coleman. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Former colleagues, industry professionals, even complete strangers shared stories of their own experiences with workplace retaliation and corporate fraud. Many asked how they could support ethical companies like mine. That evening, as I locked up the laboratory and headed home, I noticed Patricia's photograph one last time. In the soft lighting, it almost seemed like she was smiling. "We did it," I whispered to her image. "We actually did it." The next morning brought news that would have seemed impossible a year earlier. The MacArthur Foundation had announced a new fellowship program for ethical innovation, and Coleman Chen Research was among the first recipients. The grant would fund 5 years of advanced materials research with the specific mandate to share all findings openly, rather than hoarding them behind patent walls. I thought about calling David to share the news, but realized Patricia already knew. Somehow, she'd always known exactly how this story would end. If you've made it to the end of this story, I hope it resonated with you in some way. Maybe you've faced similar challenges in your career, or perhaps you've witnessed the kind of systematic problems Emily and Patricia confronted. If this story touched you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more content like this. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever had to stand up against workplace corruption? Or have you been fortunate enough to have a mentor like Patricia in your professional life? Your experiences matter, and sharing them helps build the kind of supportive community we all deserve. Thanks for reading.